What's the deal with Tengen in Jujutsu Kaisen and their barriers that are the cornerstone of all Jujutsu sorcery and cursed energy in Japan? Let's talk about it, but spoilers beware. Alright, first of all, shout out to Animorphs who inspired this video today, and y'all can pause to read the full breakdown here, but essentially they're just wanting to know, like, what's going on with Tengen? Can we actually trust them? Could they be evil? They were friends with Kenjaku. Like, what are these barriers actually for? So, let's talk about it. And this is actually a very contentious thing in the fandom these days because people can't really agree on what exactly the barriers do. And as I'm sure most of you have heard, like the general thing people say is that Tengen's barriers optimize cursed energy within Japan. And that would make sense, right? Because that would explain why Japan has so many more cursed spirits and, importantly, sorcerers compared to the rest of the world, right? Like, that is pretty much focused in Japan. Yes, we still have people like Miguel and Angel in other parts of the world, but Japan is the hotspot for cursed energy, cursed spirits, and sorcerers, right? So that would make sense if Tengen's barriers are optimizing it in that area intentionally, right? But a lot of people disagree that that is what was actually being said. And name a more iconic duo than mistranslations and JJK, right? But this is something that people still can't agree on. And it's not just John Weary we're talking about. We're talking about multiple sources of translation. So I don't want to get too long winded here. I'll try to give you the nutshell version. But the whole optimization of cursed energy thing stems from the conversation between Kenjaku and Yuki at the end of the Shibuya incident, where Kenjaku's talking about his plan, where he literally hijacks Tengen's barriers to set up the culling games, to set up the merger, right? And Kenjaku's whole thing is that he wants to optimize cursed energy. He wants to see what's next in the evolutionary ladder, right? Like the next rung beyond humans, beyond cursed spirits. So his whole thing is optimizing cursed energy. So some people think that the translations kind of got misconstrued there, and it was never saying that Tengen's barriers optimize cursed energy, but instead that's just what Kenjaku wanted to do with them, which could be the case, right? But we don't know. And if that is true and they don't optimize cursed energy, then we really have no good explanation for why Japan is the hotspot for sorcerers and cursed energy and cursed spirits, right? So it seems that, like, okay, they must optimize cursed energy because then that answers that problem. But again, a lot of people debate this and say that, you know, again, this is way more complex and there's a lot of people that go deep on this, but essentially no one can agree on that. Okay, so what we can agree on is that Tengen's barriers basically enhance sorcery to allow sorcerers to operate in Japan. Tengen's barriers are used by like the assistant managers. They help empower like veils that sorcerers are using, different barriers that they're casting. It essentially makes it a hotspot, like a just a enhancer battery for all other sorcery, which in turn helps combat cursed spirits. Like that's the whole point. Like it's to help basically, make it so that cursed spirits aren't out here ravaging Japan 24/7. It's basically like a cursed energy arsenal enhancer for everyone else, which is why Tengen is so important, right? If Tengen dies or the barriers go down, like cursed spirits are going to get way worse because sorcerers lose some of their best weapons, if you will. So that much pretty much everyone can agree on. The whole optimization thing is up for debate. But again, for my money, if they don't optimize cursed energy, we don't have a good answer for why Japan is the hotspot. So I'm getting long winded here, but the barriers help combat cursed spirits, and that's the main thing everyone agrees on. Next, let's talk about Tengen's motives. Like, why did she do all of this, right? Why did Kenjaku call her a friend? Why did she have Sukuna's corpse dressed up like a mummy? And one of the things that Animorph said in the original comment, like, is Tengen evil? Were they perhaps siphoning cursed energy with this barrier network in order to stay functionally immortal? Why did they let Toji find Geto and Riko in the Tomb of the Star Corridor? So let's talk about these things. And first and foremost, I'll say that, like, we really don't know Tengen's true motives, right? Because these things just weren't explored in the story. And now with it over, they may or may not ever get explored unless Gege decides to talk about this in an interview or we get a sequel someday or whatever, right? So really, you can make of it what you will, but I think because we do know the barriers enhance sorcery, which allow for combating cursed spirits, I do think the barriers were originally put up for altruistic motives. Like, I do think Tengen wanted to help Japan and Jujutsu society as a whole, which also explains why they just lived like a recluse in the Tomb of the Star Corridor for hundreds of years. Like, if Tengen was some sort of like mustache twirling villain and like strictly evil, then I think they would have had more of an agenda and would have been like more active in the world. But no, they were just good to like be a recluse and continue living so that the barriers could continue existing to help everyone, right? And this is even a plot point at the end of JJK because they have to go retrieve Tengen's remains from Sukuna's body and place them back so that the barriers are maintained. And they are like, this is going to be a problem one day, but we're good for now, so don't worry about it. So I do think that, again, whether there were some selfish motives cooked in there as well, we can't say. But I do think the barriers were originally erected for like good intentions, if you will, to help combat cursed spirits. Now, why did Kenjaku call Tengen their friend? Who knows, right? Like, Tengen is ancient. Kenjaku is ancient. Who knows what their relationship would have been like back in the day? Kenjaku has done some evil things, right? But, you know, strictly speaking, he's a curious, like, scientific mind, if you will, wanting to evolve things. Like, he wasn't just evil for the sake of, in a like psychopathic way, right? So maybe, you know, thousands of years ago, maybe they were friends. Maybe Kenjaku hadn't done anything kind of morally dubious at that point. Or maybe he was just speaking tongue in cheek here. Like, maybe they weren't actually friends, but just knew each other back in the day. Again, both being so ancient, this is like the only person, aside from Sukuna maybe to some extent, that Kenjaku can probably even relate to. So I don't think this necessarily speaks to Tengen being evil per se. But all that, just to not get away from myself here, I'm not saying that Tengen is like a paragon of justice. I think Tengen could very much be like selfish and have lots of other motives. And specifically, I think that Tengen, fun headcanon that I enjoy is Sukuna's mother. I know I'm rambling like crazy here, but now to the Toji part. I don't think Tengen let Toji find Geto and Riko or had anything to do with like setting all of that up. I think that Toji was kind of exempt and immune to the chaos of the Tomb of the Star Corridor because he's heavenly restricted, because he doesn't have cursed energy. He's essentially invisible to that world, right? Like, he can pass through the barriers without being restricted by them. So I don't think that Tengen could have like obstructed his path there that much, even if she wanted to. But she probably just wasn't even caring enough to like be meddling in that world. Again, Tengen had largely just resigned to continue living to let these barriers subsist, not really participating. Oh, and then for the Sukuna being dressed like a mummy and revered thing, that wasn't Tengen. We actually found this out thanks to the recent Gege Akutami Q&A from the exhibit. Essentially what happened is after Sukuna became cursed objects, originally Uruume cared for his body, right? But then once Uruume became a cursed object, presumably, his body basically kind of became lost to history, lost to time. But eventually it was recovered. And obviously Sukuna's corpse looks really strange compared to someone else's, right? And so people found it and thought it was like this religious, like Buddha worthy of worship. So like they did that. And then, you know, I guess Tengen at some point reclaimed it or refound it and just kind of kept it as it was. Now, why was it kind of enshrined within Tengen's barriers? Perhaps because it is like a very important relic in terms of cursed energy. Maybe it was helping enhance the situation at some point, but we know that Tengen was like, oh yeah, you can take it. It won't disrupt my barriers. So maybe it never helped. Maybe it did. Who knows? But again, why it was kept there at all, this kind of feeds into my theory that I thought Tengen might be Sukuna's mom, but beyond that, we don't really know. Actually, just to add on to that, even everything else aside, Sukuna's body would be a powerful cursed object, like his mummified body, so that's probably not something that Jujutsu Society wanted just anywhere. It probably needed to be protected to keep it out of the wrong hands. I did not mean to get that lost in the sauce on the yap, but I hope there's some coherent string of thought through that. But essentially, there's just a lot we don't know with Tengen, right? But at the end of the day, they got barriers all around Japan that help sorcerers fight cursed spirits. Everything else is kind of up for interpretation, depending on translation, and kind of just depending on how you want to fill in the blanks, since Gege never really gave us the deep history